The pie graph depicts the hotel's income split across several customer segments. Most of the company's income comes from the higher up market, which includes 80 hotels with a total of 45,912 rooms. Other hotels account for 3% of the total, which consists of 11 properties with 2,604 rooms. The majority of hotel income is generated by higher-end properties, with lower-end properties accounting for the smallest share. The bar graph provides information on groundwater and public supplies. According to the graph, chemicals have taken up the most, accounting for 430 parts per million in groundwater and 240 parts per million in potable water supplies. There are 190 in public supply and 110 in groundwater for food and beverages. Textiles, on the other hand, account for the least share, at 80% in groundwater and 10% in public supply. As a result, groundwater and public water supplies are dominated by chemicals. Closed forests and harsh deserts have evolved on the globe 3 times during the course of its history, as seen on these maps. During the last glacial maximum, much of Africa and Asia were covered in harsh deserts. During the early Holocene, most of the continents were covered in dense, closed forests. As of right now, closed forests account for more than 70% of the total canopy cover, whereas severe deserts have fewer than 2% of the total canopy cover. Closed woods outnumber harsh deserts as a whole. Between the years of 1900 and 2011, this graph presents data on the number of working women by marital status. The graph shows that in terms of those who aren't married, the highest number was about 80 in 2010. The least number, roughly 50, was recorded in 1900. On the graph, we can clearly observe that the biggest number of married people can be seen in 2010. In 1900, the least number is approximately 10, which is the most common. In the end, being single is more important than being married. The graph below depicts the creation of water channels and how they can be produced. We can see a meander in the first photo, and there are many trees along the meander. There is also a neck in the middle of the meander. However, when we move to the next stage, the sand becomes deposited in the river and eventually, it becomes silt around the river neck. Thus there is a new channel has created, and a new oxbow lake has begun to flow in this direction. To summarize, water and sand pressures are required to sculpt the channels of the oxbow lake. This bar graph compares New Zealand's and Australia's 2010 energy usage, both expressed as a percentage. Both Australia and New Zealand relied heavily on gasoline and oil as their primary source of energy, with Australia utilising 80% and New Zealand using 70%. In addition, Australia and New Zealand were the nations with the lowest use of coal, at around 2% in Australia's case and about 8% in New Zealand's. Petrol and oil were utilised the most, while coal was used the least in both nations on average. The flowchart depicts the many phases involved in the generation of power by solar panels. Solar panels on the roof capture the sun's rays, which are then transported and converted to alternating electricity by the inverter. To distribute the power to various lights and appliances, it first passes via a fuse box. Renewable energy from the sun is generated by solar panels and distributed through a network of transmission lines. The production of palm oil in Indonesia and Malaysia is depicted in this bar graph. From 1996 to 2008, the number of Malaysians has steadily risen on the graph. However, Indonesia's output of palm oil was smaller than Malaysia's at the time, but it has since expanded considerably to the point where it began to overtake Malaysia's in 2006. It is in 2008 when Indonesia and Malaysia achieved their highest points in history. An overview of palm oil production trends in Indonesia and Malaysia is provided by this graph. Each of the 5 pencils in the image symbolizes a distinct region of the United States. As a symbol of New Jersey, the first pencil had a length of 50.680 inches. The second pencil, which has a length of 46.750 millimeters, might be considered a Chicago. With a total length of 38.520, the third pencil is considered to be South Carolina and the fourth pencil is considered to be Michigan. The shortest pencil is the one for Virginia, which is 18.950 inches long. As a general rule, we might infer that various lengths reflect different hectares in different parts of the country. Using a shadow to collect water is illustrated in the diagram below. It's made up of a counterweight-equipped lever and a rope tied to a pole with a container at the other end. This device operates by an operator pulling down on the pole, dipping and then withdrawing a container from the water, and ultimately spilling the water into a canal. There are two types of eclipses, total and partial. To create a black shadow in a total eclipse, the moon blocks the sun's light. An umbra is a shadow that is completely darkened. An area termed the penumbra, where the shadow falls, is shadowed to a lesser extent during a partial eclipse. A total eclipse occurs only in a tiny region of Earth, but a partial eclipse occurs over a considerably broader area of the planet. This bar chart displays the mobile phone subscriptions of developed and developing nations from 2000 to 2008. In 2000, there were roughly 0.4 billion subscribers in poor nations and around 0.6 billion subscriptions in affluent countries. In 2008, subscriptions in developing nations had surged to 4 billion while subscriptions in rich countries only grew to 1 billion. Overall, the number of subscribers in developing nations greatly surpassed the number of subscriptions in affluent countries by 2008. The average monthly temperature of 3 African cities is shown in this line graph, which is measured in degrees Fahrenheit. At 55 degrees Fahrenheit in January, Cairo is the coldest place on Earth, whereas the hottest months are July and August. Temperatures in Mombasa peak in March at roughly 83 degrees Fahrenheit and fall to 75 degrees Fahrenheit in July, respectively. Winters in Cape Town may reach 70 degrees Fahrenheit, with the coldest month being July when the temperature drops to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Cairo has the most monthly temperature change, whilst Mombasa has the least, being consistently hot throughout the year. People's favorite movie genres are shown in a pie chart. Romance films accounted for 30% of all movie viewing, followed by action pictures at 25%. 20% of moviegoers preferred sci-fi or comedy flicks, while only 5% preferred dramas. Romance films are the most popular, while dramas are the least popular. The bar graph provides information on groundwater and public supplies. According to the graph, chemicals have taken up the most, accounting for 430 parts per million in groundwater and 240 parts per million in potable water supplies. There are 190 in public supply and 110 in groundwater for food and beverages. Textiles, on the other hand, account for the least share, at 80% in groundwater and 10% in public supply. As a result, groundwater and public water supplies are dominated by chemicals. In 2010, the percentage of school-aged boys participating in 5 different sports in the United Kingdom was compared between 2 age groups. A total of 87% of 8-11-year-old boys participated in football, while 78% of 12-16-year-old males did the same. There were just 19% of participants in both age categories who participated in swimming. The data in the table also demonstrates that boys of both sexes participate in a wide range of sports. Among males aged 6 to 11, football is the most popular sport, while swimming is the least so. This is a graph displaying the global monthly average of carbon dioxide in parts per million. After adjusting for the normal seasonal cycle, the dashed red line shows the worldwide monthly mean values of carbon dioxide. From 2013 to 2018, the graph indicates that the worldwide monthly average of carbon dioxide has steadily climbed. It was lowest at 394 parts per million in 2013 and highest at 405 parts per million in 2017. Generally speaking, the worldwide monthly average of carbon dioxide was lowest for 2013 and highest for 2017. From 1980 through 2030, the United States is expected to consume quadrillions of units of energy. A total of 4 quadrillion units of energy was consumed by nuclear, solar/wind, and hydropower in 1980. With 35 quadrillion units, gasoline and oil were the most used forms of energy. Hydropower is predicted to be the least consumed energy source in 2030, while gasoline and oil are predicted to be the most consumed, 50 quadrillion units. In 2030, hydropower is expected to be the least used source of energy, while gasoline and oil are expected to be the most used. The picture depicts a river running between two buildings on either side of it. In the distance, 50-story glass and concrete structures may be seen in the distance. Walking routes and parks line both sides of the river, which has black water. One boat can be seen in the foreground moving along the center of the river. It appears to be the beginning of spring, with a few trees blooming, and to be a modern metropolis in the United States of America. The line graph depicts the percentage of people who commuted to work by bicycle in various cities between the years of 2000 and 2014. Portland had the greatest percentage of bicyclists, rising from 2% in 2000 to 7% in 2014. In 2000, Washington, D.C. had the lowest percentage of bike commuters at 1%, while in 2014, Seattle had the lowest rate at slightly under 4%. Over the years, Portland has consistently had the highest percentage of residents who commute by bicycle.